The earliest blush of dawn, a pale, liquid light, would stain Lily's window. Yet, in her snug apartment above the sweet spoon, it was the symphony of scents that truly inaugurated her day. The warm, earthy breath of rising dough, interwoven with the lingering whisper of sugar from last night's cooling cookies, ascended through the floorboards. It was a fragrant overture, a lullaby coaxing her from slumber. She stretched, her spine arching like a languid cat, the aroma a familiar harbinger of purpose. Her grandmother, Rose, used to declare, "A true baker doesn't need an alarm, just a nose attuned to its destiny." Below, the Sweet Spoon's kitchen was already a hushed flurry of activity. Lily moved with an ingrained elegance, her hands instinctively seeking out flour sacks and solid blocks of butter. The bakery, a cornerstone of Willow Creek for generations, pulsed with its own ancient cadence. Its time-worn wooden planks bore the imprint of countless journeys, its brick oven radiating a profound, permeating warmth that seemed to infuse the very walls. Rose had birthed it, a young woman brimming with fierce resolve and a recipe book transcending mere ingredients. It held wisdom, affection, and the conviction that a sweet morsel could mend a fractured day. Lily sensed her presence in every swirl of batter, every tender press of dough. "Kindness is the secret ingredient, darling," Rose's voice echoed in Lily's memory, a gentle yet firm refrain. "Without it, a cake is just flour and sugar. With it, it's a hug you can taste." Lily recalled how Rose's strong, flour-dusted hands would meticulously shape each bun, her brow furrowed not with worry, but with concentrated devotion. Lily strived to mirror that every day. She poured her essence into the sourdough, gently bubbling in its ceramic crock, into the delicate spirals of cinnamon destined for morning rolls, into the precise arrangement of glazed fruit tarts. Each pastry was a small act of fealty. Today, the inaugural batch of sourdough loaves emerged from the oven, their crusts a flawless golden brown, their interiors exuding a complex, tangy perfume. Lily carefully transferred them to cooling racks, steam unfurling in fragrant tendrils. She cherished this segment of the morning, this quiet communion with her creations, before the wider world awoke and staked its claim. A small, carefully wrapped package of warm bread was set aside, alongside a tin of her signature lemon poppy seed cookies. These were not for sale. These were for Mrs. Gable. Lily glanced at the clock. Just past 7. Perfect. The brief stroll to Mrs. Gable's cottage was always a tranquil interlude. The morning mist still clung to the honeysuckle vines, and the birds offered their initial ebullient concert. Mrs. Gable, a woman whose eyes held the distilled wisdom of decades, was typically stirring by this hour. Her garden, though modest, was meticulously tended, a testament to her enduring vitality. As Lily neared, Mrs. Gable's curtains rustled, and a moment later, the front door eased open. A smile, as soft as the burgeoning light, blossomed across her face. "Lily, my dear, you're a guiding star, as always." Her voice was a hushed breath, aged but remarkably lucid. Lily extended the package. "Good morning, Mrs. Gable." "Fresh sourdough, still warm." Mrs. Gable's hands, gnarled by time but surprisingly deft, reached for the bread. She inhaled deeply, her eyes closing for a fleeting moment. "Oh, that's the fragrance of hearth and home, child. Exactly as your grandma used to make it. The very same comforting spirit." She regarded Lily, her gaze keen. "You possess her touch, you know. That indefinable something extra. It's not merely the components, it's the heart you infuse." Lily's cheeks colored, a faint rose blush. "Grandma taught me everything." "She taught you kindness," Mrs. Gable gently corrected. "And that's a lesson far more precious than any recipe." "Are those my lemon cookies?" she inquired, spotting the tin. Lily nodded. "Only for you. You pamper me, dear. Truly. Thank you." Mrs. Gable's eyes held a shimmer of something more, a silent understanding passing between them. "Be cautious out there, Lily. The world isn't always as sweet as your kitchen." Lily's smile faltered subtly, a fleeting shadow crossing her expression, but she quickly brightened. "I will. You have a lovely day, Mrs. Gable." After departing Mrs. Gable's, Lily veered towards the town square, a brief detour before the Sweet Spoon's official opening. The small park, nestled among ancient oak trees, already drew a few early risers and their offspring. A small cluster of toddlers, supervised by their bustling parents, grappled with the swings. Lily knelt, extracting a bag of miniature chocolate chip cookies from her basket. "Anyone for a treat?" she offered softly. Instantly, a flurry of tiny hands reached out, eyes wide with enchantment. "Cookie!" A small girl with bright red ribbons shrieked, clutching her offering as if it were pure gold. "Thank you, Miss Lily," chorused a boy, his face already streaked with chocolate. Lily observed them, her heart swelling with a quiet contentment. This was the essence of her labor. This was the legacy Rose had entrusted her with, not merely a bakery, but a fount of solace, a connective thread in a world that often felt too expansive and detached. Each smile, each sticky fingerprint, affirmed that the Sweet Spoon's warmth extended beyond her oven. It touched lives, one benevolent gesture, one delectable bite, at a time. The external world might be unpredictable, as Mrs. Gable hinted, but within these small, daily rituals, Lily discovered her fortitude and her purpose. The quiet hum of the village was abruptly shattered by the roar of an engine far too powerful for its narrow, winding lanes. Old Mrs. Gable, tending her petunias, nearly dropped her watering can as a sleek, obsidian-colored sports car, polished to a blinding sheen, glided to a halt in front of the Sweet Spoon. It looked utterly out of place, a predatory bird among gentle sparrows. From the driver's side emerged a figure that matched the car's audacious presence. Rex, Lily's cousin, unfolded himself with an air of practiced nonchalance. He was all sharp angles and expensive tailoring, his dark hair slicked back, a glint of a silver watch peeking from beneath his cuff. A pair of designer sunglasses, perched just so on his nose, obscured eyes that Lily knew could be both captivating and unsettling. He surveyed the modest storefront of the Sweet Spoon, a faint, almost imperceptible curl of his lip betraying his assessment. Lily, wiping flour from her hands, watched from the bakery's doorway. A knot tightened in her stomach. "Rex?" she managed, her voice a little softer than she intended. He removed his sunglasses with a flourish, revealing eyes the color of polished jade. "Cousin Lily, still slinging flour, I see." His smile was wide, charming, and utterly devoid of warmth. He strode towards her, extending a hand that felt unexpectedly cool and firm. "Good to see you. Though I must say, this place, it has potential. Rustic charm, I suppose." He glanced around, his gaze flicking over the worn wooden counter, the hand-painted menu board, and the display case holding her perfectly risen sourdough and delicate lemon tarts. "It's home," Lily replied, a defensive edge creeping into her tone. "And it's been very good to us," Rex chuckled, a low, confident sound. "Oh, I don't doubt it. But good isn't great, is it? Or profitable, for that matter." He stepped inside, his expensive leather shoes clicking on the old floorboards. He ran a finger along the edge of a rustic shelf, inspecting a jar of homemade preserves. "Honestly, Lily, you're sitting on a gold mine here, and you're treating it like a village bakery." He turned, his jade eyes fixing on her. "We need to talk about modernization, expansion, brand recognition." Lily felt a chill, despite the warm aroma of cinnamon and vanilla that usually permeated the air. "Brand recognition?" she echoed, bewildered. "People know the Sweet Spoon because of the taste, Rex. Because of the care we put into every loaf, every pastry." "Exactly," he exclaimed, pacing now, his energy filling the small space. "And that's what we leverage. We take that care, that taste, and we scale it. Imagine the Sweet Spoon in every major city. Franchises, a national distribution network for your, what do you call them? Your kindness cookies?" He picked one up, a small, unassuming shortbread disc, and took a bite. His expression remained neutral. "Not bad. A little plain for the modern palate, perhaps. We could add some exotic spices, a sprinkle of gold leaf for an artisanal touch." Lily stared at him, her heart sinking with each word. Gold leaf? The kindness cookies were simple for a reason. They were meant to be accessible, a small gesture of comfort and connection. They're not about being exotic, Rex. They're about warmth. Community. He waved a dismissive hand. Sentimentality doesn't pay the bills, Lily. You've got to think bigger. We're talking about investors, market shares. Your grandmother, bless her traditional heart, built a solid foundation. But it's time to build a skyscraper on top of it. I've already got some preliminary ideas for a rebrand. A sleeker logo, perhaps something more abstract. And the name, the Sweet Spoon, it's a bit quaint, wouldn't you say? We need something punchier, more memorable. The words struck Lily like small, sharp stones. Quaint? The name was a legacy, a whisper of generations of love and baking. She looked at his confident, unyielding face, and a cold certainty settled in her stomach. This wasn't a visit. It was an invasion. Rex wasn't here to help her. He was here to remake the Sweet Spoon in his own image, an image that valued profit over people, flash over substance. A storm was brewing, and it had just parked its expensive car outside her bakery. She had a terrible premonition that the fight to save her family's legacy had just truly begun. The scent of morning at Buttercup Bakery was usually a comforting tapestry of warm yeast, sweet vanilla, and toasted nuts. Today, however, something felt off. Lily, stirring a bowl of what should have been her signature lemon curd, caught a faint, almost metallic tang beneath the familiar sweetness. She frowned, checking the ingredients she'd meticulously measured. Everything seemed correct. Rex strode into the kitchen, a phone pressed to his ear, a triumphant smirk playing on his lips. Yes, absolutely. Bulk order, weekly delivery. Excellent. He ended the call, beaming at Lily. Big changes, Lilypad. We're streamlining. Got a new supplier for our flour. Much better margins. Lily's spoon paused midair. New supplier? But Grandma Rose's flour is special. It's a heritage grain, milled just for us. It gives the sourdough that unique chew. Nonsense, Lily, Rex dismissed with a wave of his hand. Flour is flour. This new stuff is a generic all-purpose. Half the cost. Think of the savings. Plus, it's bleached, so everything will look even brighter. More appealing to the modern palate. He clapped her on the shoulder. Innovation, darling. It's the future. Lily's stomach tightened. Grandma Rose had always insisted on that specific flour, claiming it was the soul of their bread. She felt a phantom ache in her grandmother's memory, a pang of disloyalty. But Rex was so confident, so persuasive. She bit her lip, unwilling to cause a fuss so early in the day. The first batch of bread, baked with the new flour, emerged from the oven. The loaves were pale, lacking the deep golden brown crust that usually characterized Buttercup's offerings. The aroma, too, was muted, lacking the earthy, complex notes Lily had always cherished. She sliced a piece, the interior surprisingly white, almost bleached, and the texture felt different, less resilient. It was bland, undeniably so. It's different, Lily ventured when Rex sampled a slice. He chewed thoughtfully, a slight frown briefly creasing his brow before he forced a smile. Different in a good way, lighter, less rustic, more refined. Perfect for our new, broader demographic. He winked. Don't worry, Lily. People love change. But people, it turned out, didn't always love this kind of change. The bell above the door chimed, announcing Mrs. Gable, a Buttercup regular for decades. She moved slowly, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, her eyes bright with anticipation. Morning, Lily, dear. Just in time for a fresh sourdough. And perhaps a sugar cookie for little Timmy next door? Lily wrapped a loaf, her heart sinking a little as she handed it over. Mrs. Gable took a deep sniff, her brow furrowing almost imperceptibly. It's not quite the same, is it? Her voice was gentle, but the disappointment was clear. It smells cleaner. Less like Grandma Rose's kitchen. Lily's cheeks flushed. We've had a change in suppliers, Mrs. Gable. Mrs. Gable nodded, her gaze lingering on the bread. Well, I suppose one must adapt, but a good sourdough, it has a personality, doesn't it? This one feels a little quiet. She paid, her usual cheerful chatter noticeably absent. Later that afternoon, a group of children, regulars from the nearby primary school, burst in, eager for their post-school treat. "Lily! Can I have a chocolate chip cookie, please?" shouted a small girl named Chloe, her pigtails bouncing. Lily handed them their cookies, baked with the same new, cheaper flour. The usual gleeful munching was replaced by hesitant bites and exchanged glances. Little Tommy, usually devouring his cookie in 3 bites, held a half-eaten one, a frown on his face. "It's not as chewy, Lily," he mumbled, his voice small, "and it doesn't taste like the old ones." "Mine feels powdery," Chloe added, sticking out her tongue. Lily's heart ached. These children, with their unfiltered honesty, were the truest critics. She watched them leave, their usual boisterous energy subdued, the half-eaten cookies clutched in their hands. The silence they left behind was louder than any complaint. She looked at the remaining loaves on the shelf, at the cookies in the display case. They looked superficially similar, but the essence, the heart of them, was gone. Rex might see profit margins, but Lily saw diminishing joy, fading loyalty. The taste of change, she realized, was bitter. The crisp morning air, usually carrying the comforting scent of yeast and cinnamon, was now tinged with something metallic and vaguely chemical. Lily stepped out onto the sidewalk, her gaze drawn upward. The old, hand-painted sign, its gold leaf gently peeling, was gone. In its place hung a colossal, illuminated monstrosity. Sweet Delights Bakery blazed in electric blue script, framed by a border of blinking LED lights. It pulsed, an insistent heartbeat against the quiet dignity of the street. Even in the pale morning light, it was garish, a flamboyant bruise on the bakery's venerable face. A ladder leaned against the brickwork, and Rex, wiping grease from his hands with a rag, grinned triumphantly. "What do you think, Lil? Modern, right? Catches the eye." Lily's smile felt like a fragile thing, stretched too thin. "It certainly catches the eye, Rex. It's very bright." The word felt inadequate, a tiny spark against a bonfire. The old sign, a gift from their great-grandfather, had told a story of generations. This new one screamed only of now and of profit margins. "Bright is good," Rex declared, surveying his handiwork. "Bright means people see us from down the block. Bright means more foot traffic, more sales." He gestured with the rag towards the newly installed window decals, also in electric blue, announcing, "New management, new flavors." Later, amidst the gentle clatter of baking sheets and the murmur of the morning rush, Rex leaned against the counter, a spreadsheet open on his tablet. He always seemed to be leaning these days, a casual posture that belied the sharp calculations happening in his mind. "And another thing, Lily, this whole free samples and day-old pastries for the shelter thing, it's got to stop." Lily paused, a half-formed sourdough boulé resting in her hands. "Stop? But Rex, we've always done that. It's part of who we are. It's what Grandfather taught us, that a little kindness goes a long way." Her voice was soft, but the words carried the weight of decades. "It builds goodwill. It connects us to the community." Rex scoffed, a short, sharp sound. "Goodwill doesn't pay the rent, Lily. Empathy doesn't buy new ovens. It's a waste of profit. Think about it. Every little cupcake we give away, every leftover croissant, that's money walking out the door. Money we could be reinvesting, expanding, making this place a real empire." He tapped a finger against a column of numbers on his tablet. "The numbers don't lie. Our margins are acceptable, but they could be so much more." "But it's more than just numbers," Lily insisted, her voice gaining a quiet strength. She set the dough down and wiped her hands on her apron. "It's about trust. It's about being part of something bigger than just ourselves. Remember Mrs. Henderson? The one who lost her job? We gave her a warm meal every day for weeks. She still talks about it. That's worth more than any profit, Rex." Rex pushed himself off the counter, a faint smile playing on his lips. It was a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, a glint of amused superiority. "Oh, Lily, you and your quaint notions. It's a business, not a charity. We're selling baked goods, not spiritual enlightenment. People come here for delicious treats, not for a lesson in philanthropy." He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "Sentimentality is a luxury we can't afford right now. The market is competitive. We need to be lean, mean, and utterly focused on the bottom line." He laughed then, a light dismissive sound that prickled at Lily's skin. "Kindness is a nice idea, sure, but it's not a business model. It's certainly not a strategy for growth. You're talking about fading sparkles, Lily, while I'm talking about bright, shiny signs. Think about it. Which one do you think customers notice first?" Lily looked around the bakery, at the familiar worn floorboards, the comforting hum of the mixers, the faint scent of vanilla that permeated everything. She imagined the faces of the people who received their day-old bread, the joy in a child's eyes over a free cookie. She saw not fading sparkles, but a deep, enduring glow that Rex, with all his ambition, seemed utterly blind to. The chasm between them suddenly felt vast and chilling. The scent of yeast and warm sugar, once a comforting hug, now felt thinner. Lily noticed it first in the mornings, the rhythmic clatter of pans, the cheerful hum of the mixer, the early rush of regulars. All were muted. The familiar line that stretched to the door, a rainbow of daily commuters and retirees seeking their morning pastry, had dwindled to a trickle. She stood by the bread racks, meticulously arranging a fresh batch of sourdough boulets, their crusts golden and inviting. But there was no one to invite. The bell above the door, once a constant chime, now rang only sporadically, its sound echoing a little too loudly in the quiet space. Mrs. Gable, usually the first through the door, with her precise order of a single cinnamon swirl and a small black coffee, was conspicuously absent. It had been days. "Good morning, Lily," Rex called from the back, his voice surprisingly bright for the subdued atmosphere. He emerged, wiping flour from his hands, a new glint in his eye. "Sales reports are interesting. Foot traffic is down, but unit profit margins are up. My new pricing structure is working." Lily merely nodded, her gaze sweeping over the empty tables. The polished wood, usually dusted with crumbs and sticky with spilled coffee, remained pristine. The vibrant murals, painted years ago by her grandmother, depicting whimsical scenes of baking, seemed to watch them with silent, knowing eyes. The few customers who did venture in no longer lingered. Their smiles, once broad and genuine, were now hesitant, almost apologetic. Lily heard the whispers, hushed and fleeting, like dry leaves rustling in a forgotten corner. "It's just not the same. The sourdough, it used to have a kick. And the blueberry muffins? Where's the crumble?" One afternoon, a young mother, a regular for years, bought a single croissant. Her little boy, usually clamoring for a gingerbread man, clutched her hand, his eyes wide and unsmiling. He didn't ask for anything. Lily watched them leave, the woman's shoulders slumped, the child's head bowed. A pang of deep sorrow settled in Lily's chest, heavy and cold. It wasn't just about sales. It was about the joy, the connection that had always defined the Sweet Spoon. Later that week, Mrs. Gable finally appeared, leaning heavily on her cane. Her usually bright eyes were clouded with a sadness that mirrored Lily's own. "Lily, my dear," she murmured, her voice a fragile whisper. "It's been a while. My legs aren't what they used to be and, well, I haven't had much reason to rush." Lily placed a hand gently on Mrs. Gable's arm. "It's good to see you, Mrs. Gable. Can I get you your usual?" Mrs. Gable shook her head slowly. "No, dear, not today. I just wanted to see if it was still here. The feeling, you know?" She looked around, her gaze lingering on the empty tables, the quiet counter. "It feels hollow now, like a beautiful song played on a broken instrument." Rex appeared from the back, a confident smile plastered on his face. "Mrs. Gable, good to see you. How about you try one of our new, artisan croissants? Higher butter content, premium flour, all natural ingredients, and only $1 more than the old recipe." Mrs. Gable offered a weak smile. Thank you, Rex. But I think I'll just have a cup of tea today. No sugar. As Lily prepared the tea, she watched Rex, who, oblivious to the undercurrents of disappointment, continued to talk about new suppliers and cost-effective strategies. He saw the numbers, the profit margins, the bottom line. He didn't see the bowed heads, the lingering glances of regret, the quiet, almost imperceptible withdrawal of the community that had once embraced the sweet spoon as its heart. Lily felt it acutely, a growing ache in her own heart. The bakery, once a vibrant, living entity, was slowly, painfully, losing its soul. Each quiet moment, each unspoken disappointment, chipped away at the legacy her family had so lovingly built. The air, once thick with laughter and the aroma of shared happiness, now carried only the faint, bitter scent of what once was. The scent of yeast and flour hung heavy in the air, a familiar comfort that usually masked the gnawing worry in Lily's stomach. Today, however, it seemed to amplify it. The bakery, once a bustling hub of village life, now echoed with the occasional creak of aging floorboards and the soft whir of the old refrigerated display case. Outside, a sudden commotion drew her to the window. A stout man in a slightly too tight suit, Mr. Abernathy, the village mayor, stood on a makeshift platform in the town square, gesticulating wildly. Beside him, a banner unfurled, proclaiming in bold, glittery letters, the inaugural Oakhaven Bake-Off. A collective gasp rippled through the small crowd, followed by an excited murmur. Rex, emerging from the back office with a ledger clutched in his hand, paused, his eyebrows raising in curiosity. "What's all this racket?" he muttered, pushing past Lily to get a better view. Mr. Abernathy's voice boomed across the square, amplified by a crackling microphone. "And the grand prize, folks, is a whopping 5,000 gold coins." Lily's heart leaped into her throat. 5,000 gold coins. That wasn't just a prize, it was a lifeline. It was enough to pay off the mounting debts, to replace the ancient oven that threatened to give up the ghost, to keep Grandma Rose's legacy alive. Rex's eyes, usually sharp, now gleamed with an almost predatory intensity. 5,000? That's it, he declared, slamming the ledger onto the counter with a decisive thud. We're entering. And we're winning. Lily turned, a small smile playing on her lips. What are we thinking of making? Something classic, perhaps? Grandma's cranberry scones always won rave reviews. Rex scoffed, dismissing her suggestion with a wave of his hand. Scones? Lily, this isn't a village tea party. This is a competition with serious money on the line. We need something grand, something spectacular. A multi-tiered masterpiece. We'll use imported saffron, edible gold leaf, and that rare vanilla bean extract I saw advertised in the capital's culinary magazine. Cost no object. We'll call it the Golden Zenith. It'll be a showstopper, something they've never seen. He began sketching furiously on a scrap of parchment, his pen scratching out intricate designs of swirls and towering tiers. His mind was already calculating costs, profit margins, and the future glory. Lily watched him, a knot tightening in her stomach. Rex's ambition was admirable, his intelligence undeniable, but his vision often lacked a certain warmth, a connection to the very heart of baking. Grandma Rose always said the best ingredients were love and kindness, not just expensive imports. Later that evening, after Rex had departed, his mind still buzzing with grand designs, Lily found herself drawn to the old recipe box in the corner, nestled amongst faded photographs and dried lavender. Her fingers traced the worn wooden lid. Inside, tucked beneath dozens of well-loved recipes, was a yellowed card, her grandma's familiar script scrawled across it. Rose's humble apple pie for a friend in need. She remembered the story. A harsh winter, a struggling farmer, and Grandma Rose arriving at his doorstep with this very pie, its warmth radiating kindness. It wasn't fancy, didn't boast exotic ingredients, but it was honest, comforting, and filled with a generosity that transcended mere sustenance. A quiet resolve settled over Lily. Rex's Golden Zenith would be a marvel of engineering and expense, no doubt. But what if the judges, what if the village, yearned for something more, something that spoke to the soul, not just the palate? She began to gather her ingredients. Crisp, local apples from the orchard down the road, a handful of cinnamon, a pinch of nutmeg, butter from Mrs. Henderson's dairy. Each item was simple, familiar. As she peeled the apples, their sweet, earthy scent filled the quiet bakery, a stark contrast to Rex's imagined saffron and gold. She hummed a tune her grandma used to sing, her hands moving with a practiced grace that spoke of generations of baking. This pie wouldn't just be a dessert. It would be a story, a memory, a taste of home, and a quiet act of defiance against the encroaching greed. The competition might be about 5,000 gold coins, but for Lily, it was about something far more precious. The air in the grand hall buzzed with 1,000 different scents. The sharp citrus of lemon curd, the warm spice of cinnamon, the comforting sweetness of vanilla. Bakers, their faces flushed with the heat of anticipation in nearby ovens, bustled around their stations, making last-minute adjustments. Silver platters gleamed under the stage lights, each holding a creation vying for the coveted golden spoon. Lily, her heart thrumming a nervous rhythm against her ribs, stood beside her humble wooden table. Her apple pie, nestled in its ceramic dish, looked almost demure amidst the towering confections around her. The scent of baked apples and a hint of nutmeg wafted gently, a quiet promise compared to the boisterous aromas nearby. A hush fell over the crowd as the head judge, a formidable woman with a stern expression and an even sterner palate, approached the stage. Rex, impeccably dressed in a chef's whites that seemed impossibly crisp, stood beside his entry. It was a true marvel of engineering and confectionery, a 7-tiered monstrosity depicting a fantastical castle, complete with sugar-spun turrets and edible stained-glass windows made from isomalt. It shimmered, a monument to ambition and an almost aggressive display of skill. Murmurs rippled through the audience, a mixture of awe and thinly veiled envy. And now, for our first presentation, the judge announced, her voice resonating through the microphone. Mr. Reginald Thorne's Castle of Confections. Rex offered a charming, practiced smile, a glint of triumph in his eyes as he gestured to his masterpiece. A tribute to the grandeur of culinary artistry, he began, his voice smooth and confident. Each tier represents a different flavor profile, a journey through taste, designed to elevate the... He didn't get to finish. With a groan that seemed to echo through the suddenly silent hall, a hairline crack spider-webbed across the second tier. A collective gasp rose from the crowd. Rex's smile faltered, replaced by a flicker of panic. He reached out, as if to steady it, but it was too late. The crack widened, a deep fissure, and then, with a soft, sickening thud, the top 5 tiers of the castle began to list precariously. Sugar spires crumbled, edible windows shattered, and edible knights toppled into a sticky, colorful mess. A cascade of fondant, buttercream, and structural despair rained down onto the pristine white tablecloth. The castle, once a symbol of his soaring ambition, dissolved into a heap of sugary rubble, a glittering wreckage. A wave of stunned silence blanketed the hall, quickly followed by a cacophony of whispers and suppressed giggles. Rex's face, usually so composed, was a mask of disbelief and mortification. He stared at the ruined edifice, his mouth slightly agape, the grand narrative of his cake now just a sticky puddle. The head judge, her brow furrowed, simply raised an eyebrow. "Moving on," she declared, her voice devoid of emotion, though a hint of something akin to satisfaction played around the corners of her lips. Lily felt a pang of sympathy, despite everything. To see such an elaborate effort collapse so spectacularly, it was almost heartbreaking. But then she remembered the hours she'd spent in her grandmother's kitchen, the careful peeling of apples, the comforting scent of cinnamon and butter, the stories her grandmother wove with each pinch of spice. Her gaze drifted to her simple pie, its golden brown crust crimped with care. It wasn't flashy, it didn't boast of architectural marvels. It was just good, honest. Her turn was next. A tremor ran through her, a familiar shyness that always threatened to overwhelm her in large crowds. She took a deep, fortifying breath, the scent of her pie filling her lungs. A quiet strength. It smelled of home, a family, of generations of love baked into every bite. It wasn't about winning, not truly. It was about sharing a piece of her heart, a legacy. With a newfound resolve, Lily pushed her shoulders back, picked up her ceramic dish, and walked towards the judge's table. Her pie might be humble, but it was built on a foundation of something far stronger than sugar or ambition. It was built on love. A hush fell over the town square as the three judges approached Lily's pie, a golden-brown masterpiece radiating warmth. Rex, ever the showman, had already presented his own creation, a flamboyant tart adorned with candied violets and spun sugar, which had garnered polite, if somewhat muted, applause. Now all eyes were on Lily. She stood beside her simple apple pie, her hands clasped, a faint blush on her cheeks. Mrs. Gable, her silver hair pulled back neatly, took the first slice. Her movements were slow and deliberate as she lifted a forkful to her lips. The aroma of baked apples, cinnamon, and a hint of something deeper, nutmeg, allspice, wafted towards her. As she tasted, her eyes, usually a little clouded with age, widened slightly. A soft sigh escaped her, almost perceptible amidst the expectant silence. She closed her eyes for a moment, a faint smile playing on her lips. It wasn't just the sweetness or the perfectly flaky crust that melted on the tongue. It was a flavor that evoked sun-drenched orchards, a warm hearth, and the gentle touch of a loved one. It was the taste of home. The second judge, a stern-faced baker from a neighboring town known for his unyielding standards, took his turn. He cut a precise square, examining the layers of fruit, the uniform golden hue of the crust's underside. He chewed slowly, his brow furrowed in concentration. For a long moment, his expression remained inscrutable, then a barely perceptible nod. He took another bite, a small, uncharacteristic hum escaping him. The village held its breath. Even Rex, usually so confident, fidgeted, a flicker of unease crossing his face. The final judge, a culinary critic from the capital, known for his acerbic wit and discerning palate, approached with an air of detached superiority. He speared a piece, examining it as if it were a rare artifact. He brought it to his nose, inhaling deeply, then tasted. His eyes, which usually held a glint of sardonic amusement, softened. He chewed, his gaze drifting over the anxious faces in the crowd, then back to the pie. "Extraordinary," he murmured, his voice surprisingly gentle. "A symphony of comfort." He took another bite, then another, a genuine smile spreading across his face. "It tastes like kindness itself." Lily's heart pounded against her ribs. She hadn't dared to hope for such a reception. She had simply baked with all the love and care her grandmother had instilled in her, using the apples from their own orchard and the secret blend of spices passed down through generations of Sweet Spoon bakers. The judges conferred in hushed tones, their glances darting between Lily's pie and Rex's ornate tart. The tension in the square was thick enough to cut with a knife. Rex, who had been leaning against a stall with a smug expression, now stood upright, his smile faltering. Finally, the culinary critic stepped forward, holding a microphone. "Friends, villagers, bakers," he began, his voice resonating across the square. "This year's Sweet Spoon Baking Contest has presented us with two truly remarkable entries. Both display skill, dedication, and a passion for the craft." He paused, letting the suspense build. However, one pie stood out. One pie, in its simplicity and profound flavor, touched our very souls. It reminded us of the true essence of baking, not just technique, but heart. He turned, his gaze settling on Lily, who felt a sudden surge of heat in her cheeks. "The winner of this year's Sweet Spoon Baking Contest, by unanimous decision, is Lily Willow for her magnificent apple pie." A collective cheer erupted, a wave of joyful sound that washed over Lily. Villagers clapped, whistled, and stamped their feet. Children, who had been impatiently waiting, now jumped with excitement. Tears welled in Lily's eyes as she saw Mrs. Gable beaming, a handkerchief pressed to her lips. Rex, his face pale, managed a tight, almost imperceptible nod in Lily's direction. The carefully constructed facade of his ambition seemed to crack, revealing a sliver of genuine surprise. perhaps even a hint of respect. Lily, overwhelmed, could only manage a small, shy bow. As the crowd surged forward to congratulate her, she felt a warmth spread through her chest, not just from the cheers, but from the genuine affection in their eyes. The Sweet Spoon wasn't just a bakery, it was the heart of their village, and today its true spirit, the spirit of kindness and genuine connection, had been unequivocally affirmed. The taste of her pie had not only won a contest, it had rekindled a forgotten warmth in their community. The mingled aromas of cinnamon and warm butter, deeply familiar yet suddenly jarring, wafted from the bakery's open door. Concealed in the alley shadows, Rex observed Lily pass a meticulously iced cupcake to Mrs. Gable. The elderly woman's face, usually lined with a quiet resignation, softened into a radiant smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes with unfeigned delight. "Oh, Lily dear." Mrs. Gable's voice was a gentle murmur. "Just like Grandma Rose's, you truly have her knack." A faint blush, like a nascent rose, colored Lily's cheeks. "It's a fresh recipe, Mrs. Gable. A touch of lavender, a hint of orange zest." "It's more than just what's in it, child." Mrs. Gable patted Lily's hand, her gaze lingering on the confection. "It's infused with spirit. I haven't tasted such comfort in ages." Rex absorbed the interaction, a tightening sensation in his chest. He witnessed not merely a transaction, but a bond, a fleeting moment of pure, undiluted happiness born from a simple act of generosity and a perfectly crafted treat. This wasn't about profit margins or market share. It was something far more profound. His grandmother, Rose, had built the Sweet Spoon upon this very cornerstone. He'd dismissed it as sentimental drivel, a quaint ideal in a cutthroat world. Yet, seeing it now, reflected in Mrs. Gable's luminous expression and Lily's modest grin, a prickle of shame stung him. He pushed off the brick wall, the scrape of his shoes on the pavement making Lily look up, startled. Mrs. Gable, ever perceptive, offered a polite nod before continuing her slow progress down the street, clutching her treasured cupcake. Lily's demeanor hardened, her gentle features tightening into a defensive mask. "What do you want, Rex?" Her voice, though quiet, held an unexpected edge of steel. He inhaled deeply, the words turning to ash in his mouth. I was wrong, Lily." He caught a flicker of disbelief in her eyes. "About everything. About this place. About Grandma Rose's true vision for it." He gestured vaguely toward the bakery, then to the spot where Mrs. Gable had stood. "I just saw it. The way she looked at that cupcake. The way you looked. That's what the Sweet Spoon is really about, isn't it?" She remained silent, her gaze unwavering, compelling him to continue. "I was so fixated on the figures, on what I perceived as success, that I lost sight of what genuinely matters. I was a fool. A grasping, myopic fool." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of genuine frustration. "I'm sorry, Lily, truly, for trying to alter things, for pressuring you, for failing to see what was right in front of me." The tension in her shoulders eased almost imperceptibly. "It's a family legacy, Rex," she said, her voice softer now, a trace of its usual warmth returning. "More than just bricks and mortar, it's about sharing joy." "I understand that now," he affirmed, meeting her eyes. "And I want to help you revive it. The real Sweet Spoon." A faint spark of hope flickered in her gaze. "You mean you'll work with me?" "Yes, if you'll have me." He offered a tentative smile. "Teach me, Lily. Teach me how to bake with soul." The following morning, Rex, with surprising punctuality, found himself in a flour-dusted apron, his usually immaculate hands coated in dough. Lily, patient but firm, guided his clumsy attempts at kneading. "It's not just about mixing, Rex. It's about sensing the dough, understanding its texture, its pliability." He chuckled, a genuine, unforced sound. "So, it's alive?" "In a sense, yes," she replied, demonstrating the perfect fold. "It responds to nurture, just like people." He learned to cream butter and sugar until the mixture was airy and pale, to separate eggs with a delicate touch, and to sift flour until it was as fine as powdered snow. He discovered the nuanced art of tempering chocolate, the intricate interplay of flavors in a fruit tart, and the precise instant a loaf of bread reached golden perfection. Lily, in turn, was surprised by his quick intellect and unexpected capacity to absorb information. He wasn't merely going through the motions, he was genuinely striving to comprehend. As the days unfolded into weeks, the comforting sense of cinnamon, vanilla, and freshly baked bread once again permeated every corner of the sweet spoon. Rex, no longer issuing commands, found himself sharing laughter with Lily over a collapsed cake or a batch of over-caramelized cookies. He learned the names of the regulars, recalling their preferred treats, even suggesting novel flavor combinations based on Lily's traditional recipes. The revitalized sweet spoon wasn't just about the old recipes. It was about the old spirit, rekindled and infused with new vitality. Lily's creativity flourished with Rex's practical suggestions for display and packaging, without compromising the homemade charm. They reinstated Grandma Rose's Kindness Corner, a small display of complimentary cookies for anyone seeking a little cheer. One afternoon, Rex watched Lily hand a small bag of shortbread to a young mother, struggling with a crying baby. The mother's grateful smile, the baby's sudden gurgle of delight as it clutched the cookie, mirrored Mrs. Gable's joy that initial day. A warmth spread through Rex's chest, a feeling far more profound than any financial spreadsheet had ever provided. He looked at Lily, flour smudged on her cheek, her eyes bright with purpose. Grandma Rose would be proud, he said, a genuine smile gracing his lips. Lily returned his smile, a silent acknowledgement of their shared endeavor. The formula for the sweet spoon had transformed, not in its components, but in the heart poured into every single indulgence. It was a recipe for joy, for connection, and for a family legacy, truly baked with devotion. The bakery, once imperiled by ambition, now prospered, a beacon of warmth and kindness once more, its sweet aroma a testament to genuine delight.